They always say the road teaches you things, if you're out here long enough. Teaches you patience. Teaches you how to read people without a word. Teaches you that the dark isn't empty, it's just waiting. I've been a long-haul trucker for nearly 11 years. Driven through blizzards in Montana, sandstorms in Arizona, backwoods in Mississippi so twisted and narrow I had to fold in my side mirrors just to pass. I've seen a man try to wave me down in the dead of night with no car in sight, only for him to vanish into thin air when I blinked. I've seen shapes in the fog that didn't belong. I've heard whispers in the CB when no one else was on the frequency. But none of that, not a single damn thing, prepared me for Route 89. It started with a delivery that shouldn't have existed. I was parked outside a truck stop diner just north of Charleston, West Virginia, sipping on black coffee that tasted like ash and old socks when my tablet buzzed. I nearly ignored it. I wasn't even on the clock, but something about the tone felt wrong. Like it wasn't just another job. The dispatch details were blank. No shipper listed. No receiver. Just a pickup location, Miller's Depot, 3 miles up Old Buckhorn Road. And a destination, Knoxville. No stops. Use Route 89 only. The instructions ended with a line I thought was a typo. Driver will receive rules at sight. Must obey all. I scoffed. Thought it was some weird prank. Maybe a test delivery for new hires or a hazing ritual. Still, my hands felt clammy as I stared at that screen. My gut, my driver's instinct, twisted like someone had looped a bungee cord through it. I finished my coffee, threw a 20 on the counter, and stepped back out into the cold. Miller's Depot was a dying warehouse squatting in the middle of nowhere, lights flickering like they were scared of the dark. There wasn't a single other truck in the yard. Just mine. Waiting. And inside the warehouse? Only one man. He didn't give me his name. Just shoved a clipboard into my hands without a word. His fingers were stained yellow, nails split. He didn't blink once. He slid an envelope onto the dashboard before I could say anything. It was old. Torn in one corner. Thick paper, like the kind folks used before printers took over. Red ink scrawled across the front read. For Alexander Ridge, do not open until engine is running. How the hell did he know my name? I asked him, but he was already gone. I loaded the trailer myself, unmarked crates, maybe 7 or 8 of them. No labels. No paperwork. No weight marked. I should have turned around then. Should have reported it. But I didn't. Truth is, I was broke. Rent was due. And somewhere in my mind, there was a voice whispering, "You've driven worse roads." When I climbed into the cab and turned the key, the engine rumbled to life. The headlights lit up a wall of thick Appalachian fog. I reached for the envelope with one hand, keeping the other on the wheel, like I was expecting something to lunge at me from the shadows. I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. A typed list. And at the top, in bold red letters, the 7 rules for Route 89. Break them, and you won't make it out. My first reaction was to laugh. Loud. I smacked the steering wheel with my palm and laughed like a man who's been on the road too long. But even as I did, I felt my mouth dry up. The rules weren't funny. They weren't quirky road legends. They were written like commandments. No explanations. No logic. They read. 1. Do not stop for anyone, no matter what they look like or say. 2. Flash your headlights twice at mile marker 113. 3. Never open your window between 3:13 a.m. and 3:33 a.m. 4. Ignore anyone you hear on channel 19 asking for help. 5. Do not check your rearview mirror after passing the old green church. 6. You must honk 3 times before entering the Ridgeway Tunnel. 7. If you see the woman in white, close your eyes and do not breathe. I stared at the paper until my eyes hurt. Then I folded it carefully and tucked it into the dash. I should have turned around, but I didn't. I shifted into gear, rolled past the warehouse, and followed the winding gravel road that would take me to Route 89. The fog was thicker now, pressing against the windshield like a living thing. And somewhere in the static of my radio, a voice crackled to life. Breaker 19, welcome to the road, Alex. My name. Again. I didn't reply. Just gripped the wheel tighter and pressed the gas. Something was waiting for me on that road. I didn't know it yet. But I was about to find out. The fog rolled in thicker than soup. It clung to the windshield like cold breath, even though the night air was still. I'd been driving for maybe 30 minutes on Route 89. Just me, the growl of the engine, and the distant hum of something I couldn't name. The road twisted through the Appalachian backwoods like it was trying to lose me. No streetlights. No signs. Just tall, leaning trees that looked more like watchers than plants. My headlights cut the fog in narrow beams, barely enough to see 20 feet ahead. I slowed down a little, hands gripping the wheel tighter. The rules were sitting on the passenger seat, folded up. I hadn't planned to follow them. I'd laughed, actually, rules written in red ink on old yellow paper. Seemed like something out of a prank or ghost story. But that laugh had died in my throat when I hit the state line, and the radio started picking up whispering. Not voices. Whispering. Still, I wasn't ready to believe. Not yet. That's when I saw her. Just up ahead, by the shoulder, someone standing still in the fog. A woman. I caught sight of her in the high beams. Long black hair, jeans soaked to the knees, and a white sweater that clung to her like she'd just climbed out of a river. She wasn't moving. Just staring down at the pavement like it had told her something terrible. I hit the brakes without thinking. I should have kept driving. God help me, I should have remembered Rule 2. Don't pick up hitchhikers on 89. But I didn't. I coasted to a stop and rolled down the passenger window. You okay? I asked, leaning over. She didn't answer. I leaned a little closer. You hurt? She turned her head slowly. Her face came into view, and for a second my breath caught. She looked like someone I knew. She reminded me of Sarah, my younger brother's girlfriend. The one who died with him in that wreck. Same eyes. Same quiet kind of sadness. She looked right at me, and I swear her lips moved, but no sound came out. Her mouth just shaped the word please. Climb in, I said. She opened the door and stepped up into the cab like she'd done it 1,000 times. Sat down next to the folded rules, which she didn't seem to notice. I shut the window, the silence wrapping around us like a wet blanket. What's your name? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She didn't answer. We rolled back onto the road. The fog swallowed the tail lights like it was glad to have us. I can drop you at the next town, I offered. Or a station, maybe. You got anybody I can call? Her head turned toward me. She looked tired, but her lips were moving again. Only this time, sound came out. You never looked back. I nearly drove off the road. I glanced at her, heart hammering. What did you say? You never looked back. You left me there. I screamed your name. Her voice, God, it wasn't hers. It was Josh's. My brother. I slammed on the brakes, skidding the rig slightly. I turned to her, but she was gone. Seat empty. Passenger door shut. No trace she'd ever been there. Except, the folded rules were now open. Spread flat on the seat, like someone had read them. Rule 2 was underlined. Don't pick up hitchhikers on 89. I stared at it, my throat dry. The engine idled quietly, like it was waiting for me to move. Something scraped across the top of the trailer. Slow. Like nails or claws. I didn't want to look up, so I didn't. I put the truck in gear and started driving again. I didn't stop for the rest of the night. Not for gas. Not for food. Not even when I thought I saw that same woman miles later, standing beneath a dead tree. Just staring. Waiting. And me? I kept going. Because I finally understood something. This road doesn't forgive. And it doesn't forget. I was somewhere deep in the hills when the CB radio crackled to life. It started with a soft hiss, like wind slipping under a door. I hadn't heard a peep on the radio for the last 2 hours, not since I crossed into the black stretch of Route 89. The mountains here are steep and the trees thick, hunched together like old men whispering secrets. The road felt like it didn't want to be found, like it bent away from the world on purpose. I leaned forward, flicked the volume knob. Breaker 19, you out there, Alex? I froze. My foot lifted off the gas. My heart started beating harder than it should have. Nobody had called me by name. Nobody should have known my name. My handle's Ridge Runner. I don't give out my real name on the CB. Ever. The voice came again, friendly, steady. Come on now. Don't be shy. I know you're out there. It wasn't the voice of some punk messing around on an open channel. No. It had weight to it. Gravel under the words. Like a man who had spent too many years talking to engines and ghosts. Who is this? I asked, my voice drier than it felt. I gripped the mic tighter than I needed to. You got a name, or are we playing games tonight? There was a long pause, filled only by static. Then, name's Dave. Dave Holloway. I used to run dispatch out of Charleston, before IOL. Before I took a different kind of job. I'd heard the name. Holloway had disappeared years ago. Rumor was he drove into the hills one night and never came back. Some said his truck was found abandoned at an old way station. Others said there was no truck. Just his logbook and a patch of scorched road. What do you want? I asked. You already broke a rule, he said, and my blood turned to ice. Picked up the crying girl near mile 78, didn't you? I stared through the windshield. The road was empty now. Just curves and shadows. My knuckles whitened on the wheel. You saw that? I asked, trying not to let my voice shake. I see everything on this road, Dave said. And now it sees you. I didn't know what he meant. Not yet. But my hands were sweating, and my back was tense like I was waiting for a crash that hadn't happened yet. You think these rules are a joke, he continued. You think they're old trucker tales meant to spook the rookies? I didn't answer. You broke rule 2, he said. And once a rule is broken, the road remembers. The CB went quiet. Silence fell inside the cab, except for the sound of my own breathing. My headlights stretched ahead into the dark like spears of light, trying to stab through fog. I kept expecting something to run out onto the road. A deer. A person. That girl again. But the road stayed empty. I checked the paper with the rules again. It was crumpled now, stained from my fingers and the coffee spill earlier. 7 rules. Just 7. But they suddenly felt like commandments. I reread Rule 2. Do not stop for the crying woman on the roadside. No matter what she says. No matter who she looks like. I thought about my brother. About her voice. She looked like him. I whispered, almost to myself. The radio snapped back on, like it had been listening the whole time. That's how she gets in, Alex. That's how they all get in. I dropped the mic. The road stretched ahead, but I didn't feel alone anymore. Something was watching. Something knew me. And the deeper I drove, the more I realized that Route 89 wasn't just a shortcut through the mountains. It was a trap, and I'd already tripped the wire. The road narrowed as the mountains thickened around me like a closing fist. I'd been driving for hours without passing another soul. No taillights ahead. No headlights behind. Just me, the hum of the engine, and the kind of silence that seeps in through your vents no matter how tight you shut them. According to the old GPS mounted to my dash, I was coming up on the Morris Hollow Tunnel. I glanced at the rules again, the paper now creased and smudged from where I'd kept folding and unfolding it. Rule number 4, honk 3 times before entering the tunnel. I read it twice. A nervous laugh slipped out. 3 honks? What the hell for? To scare away bats. I reached for the horn but paused. It felt stupid. I was tired, and my head was buzzing from too much caffeine and too little sleep. Somewhere behind my eyes, a headache had started to bloom. I don't believe in haunted roads, I muttered. And then like a complete idiot, I drove straight into that tunnel without touching the horn. The darkness swallowed me whole. 1 second I was in the fading gray of dusk, and the next, I was inside something that didn't feel like a tunnel at all. My headlights only stretched about 15 feet ahead, and even that seemed muted, like the light was being sucked in by the walls. The tunnel was long, longer than it should have been. I knew tunnels. This one stretched like it didn't want me to come out the other side. And then the radio died. The CB, which had been crackling quietly with static, went completely silent. My phone showed no signal, which was no surprise, but the GPS froze. The screen turned black. I gripped the wheel tighter. Something scraped the top of the truck. Not hard. Just a whisper of metal on metal. Like branches, I told myself. But there were no trees in a tunnel. The air felt heavier, too, like the weight of the mountain had settled on my chest. I rolled down the window slightly. A cold draft hit me, sharp and sour, like rotten eggs and burnt hair. That's when I saw it. Or rather, when I stopped seeing. The headlights cut out. No flicker, no warning, they just blinked off. My entire cab was filled with pure black. My breath caught. I hit the high beams. Nothing. I turned the headlights off and back on. Still nothing. I was blind. Come on, I whispered, slapping the steering wheel. Not now. A dull thud echoed beneath me. Then another. Something was under the truck. Walking? Dragging? I don't know. But the floor vibrated with each slow movement. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I sat frozen with my foot hovering over the brake, not daring to touch anything. And then I heard breathing. Not my own. Not from inside the cab. It came from just outside my window. Slow, deliberate breaths, like whatever it was didn't need to rush. The window fogged slightly, even though the outside air was cold enough to bite. I stared ahead, eyes wide, willing my vision to return. But there was nothing. Just black and the sound of that thing waiting. Then a voice. Soft. A whisper in the dark. You forgot the horn. I gasped and slammed the door lock. The headlights blinked back on. Just like that. The tunnel looked normal again. Concrete walls, water stains, a faint curve up ahead. Nothing in front of me. Nothing under me. And when I looked at the floor of the cab, no fog on the window. I pressed the gas harder than I needed to. The truck roared forward and didn't slow until I burst out of the far end of the tunnel and into a cold, open night. I didn't stop until I saw a clearing just past a small overlook. I parked the truck, stepped out, and vomited on the gravel. When I finally caught my breath, I climbed back in and stared at the rules. That same line stared back at me. Honk 3 times before entering the tunnel. I pulled out a pen and circled it, twice. Then I scribbled underneath in shaking letters. Never skip the rules. Even the stupid ones. Especially the stupid ones. I turned the CB on again, hoping for something, anything, but the static was back. And then it crackled just once. A voice, low and rasped, like it had traveled through mud to reach me. 1 down, 6 to go. Then silence. I didn't sleep that night. I just drove. The rain had started just past midnight, falling in long, lazy streaks across the windshield. I turned the wipers up a notch, but it was like trying to sweep away ghosts. Fog clung to the road like a second skin, and the old mountain highway twisted tighter with every mile. I hadn't seen another set of headlights in over an hour. I was starting to think I'd dreamed the whole hitchhiker thing, the woman with my brother's voice, the vanishing act. Maybe it was exhaustion, or maybe the road was playing tricks. Then I saw it. A piece of paper. Right there. On the passenger seat. I didn't put it there. I reached over, slow and cautious, like it might bite. The paper was yellowed, creased, the edges stained with something dark. Ink? Oil? Blood? There was handwriting on it. Sloppy, jagged letters like whoever wrote it was shaking. If you see the lights in the trees, don't stop. Don't even look. Just drive. Eyes forward. They're not stars. My stomach turned cold. I glanced out the windshield. Nothing but fog and the endless black ribbon of Route 89. I hadn't seen lights. Not yet. But the paper, it wasn't mine. I hadn't touched a pen since I left the last truck stop, and this handwriting wasn't mine anyway. It looked desperate, like the last words of someone who knew no one would ever find them. I checked the floor, the glove box, the dash. There were more. More pages. One tucked under my thermos. Another sticking out from behind the visor. A whole damn collection of handwritten notes, like a scavenger hunt laid by ghosts. Some were short. Some were full-page ramblings. Don't trust the signs. They move when you blink. The man on the CB who calls himself Dave, he's not who you think he is. He's not even a man anymore. I turned left at the fork and drove straight into last Tuesday. Do not take the left fork. I read them with a dry mouth and a heart thudding like it was trying to break out of my chest. These weren't just warnings. They were journal entries. From other drivers. People who had been on this road before me. And none of them had made it out. I could feel the cab getting colder. Not from the air outside. It was the kind of cold that comes from the inside, deep in your chest, where fear nests. I turned the heat up, but it didn't help. One page caught my eye. It was newer. Not as weathered. The handwriting was different, neater, more careful. Still shaky, but less rushed. If you find this, you're not the first. You won't be the last. The road doesn't end. It loops. It breaks you, rebuilds you, and then sends you back. But worse. You'll meet Dave. He'll act like he's doing you a favor. He's not. He works for something older than the asphalt. Something in the mountain. Something hungry. I stared at that last sentence for a long time. Something in the mountain. That hit different. I thought back to the way the tunnel curved in ways it shouldn't have, how the rocks pressed in too close, how my radio had picked up whispers instead of static. I folded the page carefully and tucked it into my own journal. I don't know why. Maybe it felt like a pact. Maybe it just felt wrong to throw it away. I didn't sleep that night. I just kept driving, the road hissing under my tires like a living thing. I drank coffee that tasted like dirt and stared into the dark like it was going to answer me. More pages showed up the next day. Some I found in the back of the cab, tucked under my mattress. Others were rolled up in the glove box. One was even pressed flat against the inside of the windshield when I came back from a piss break. That one simply said, "There's no such thing as an exit. Only delays." I started keeping them all in a folder. Not just for myself, but in case. Well, in case someone came after me. Like I had come after them. Maybe I was the next link in the chain. Maybe I was already too late. One last note, slipped under my door while I slept in the cab, stuck with me more than the others. You're not losing your mind. The road wants you to think that. That's the first trap. The second is thinking you can beat it. I didn't sleep the next night either. I just kept driving. Eyes forward. Hands at 10 and 2. And I never, ever looked into the trees. The night air hung thick and cold outside my truck. I could see the faint glow of the dashboard lights flickering against the windshield. Route 89 stretched out ahead of me like a ribbon of shadow, curling through the dense trees that closed in tight on both sides. The radio crackled softly, but nothing was talking back. Just static and silence. I was driving slow, eyes darting between the road and my rearview mirror. Every mile felt heavier, like the dark was pressing closer, trying to squeeze the life out of me. Somewhere deep in my gut, I knew I was being tested, that every moment out here was a gamble. Then, at mile marker 113, I saw her. She stood by the roadside, a woman in a long, faded dress, her hair tangled and hanging over her face. She was crying, quiet, broken sobs that barely made a sound over the wind. At first, I thought maybe she was just another lost soul, one of the usual stragglers you sometimes see hitchhiking on the edge of nowhere. But I remembered the rules. Don't stop for a crying woman. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. My heart hammered loud in my chest, but I forced myself to keep driving. The truck rumbled past her, the headlights barely catching her outline as she watched me go. For a moment, I swear I heard a voice. Soft, familiar, whispering my name. And then suddenly the truck was filled with cold. The temperature dropped so fast I could see my breath curling in the stale air. The radio sputtered, and the static rose to a low howl. I stole a glance at the passenger seat, expecting nothing but empty space. But there he was, my brother. He looked just like I remembered, younger, his eyes wide and sad, staring straight ahead with that same half-smile he used to wear when he didn't want to worry me. "You're getting closer," he said, voice barely louder than a breeze. I blinked, and he was gone. The road felt different after that. The trees seemed darker, the shadows deeper. Every sound was sharper, a twig snapping, a distant howl, the soft scrape of something brushing against the side of my rig. I realized then that the rules weren't just warnings. They were lifelines. And for the first time, I understood what I was really fighting against. The road wasn't just a path through the mountains. It was something alive, watching, waiting. And I was running out of time. I pulled off Route 89 as the sky grew heavy with clouds, the kind that looked like they might swallow the whole mountain. The old rest stop sat there like a forgotten ghost, half hidden by weeds and rusted signs flapping in the wind. The place smelled like damp wood and something older, something that didn't want to be disturbed. The truck growled softly as I shut off the engine. My hands lingered on the steering wheel, feeling the rough leather, as if it could steady me against whatever was waiting out there. I didn't want to believe the stories about Dave, the pact, the shadows under the road, but my gut told me this stop might hold some answers. The door creaked as I pushed it open, stepping inside the building. Dust motes danced in the weak light filtering through grimy windows. Old flyers yellowed with time stuck to the walls, advertising towns long gone or events that never came. I moved cautiously, every footstep echoing. Then I found it. A pile of old shipping logs and faded journals stacked on a counter, some torn, some scribbled with frantic handwriting. I pulled one out and opened it, the pages brittle. The words were scrawled in a hurry, filled with fear and warnings. Drivers like me, trapped on this cursed route, writing what they could before they disappeared. I flipped through more papers until a VHS tape caught my eye, sitting half buried under the clutter. It had no label except a faded 1987 written in marker. Something about it called to me. I grabbed an old, battered TV in the corner and dusted it off. The screen flickered to life as the tape rolled. Grainy footage showed a younger Dave, smiling, back when he was just a dispatcher. He spoke to the camera, calm but nervous, about making Route 89 work for them, a plan to summon something beneath the road to keep the trucks moving faster, safer. But his words grew darker, his smile fading as he described a price no one expected. The pact was made. The shadows beneath the asphalt stirred. Dave was no longer just a man. He was a guardian of a secret too terrible to name. I shut the TV off, the silence pressing in. My heart pounded. I realized then that I was part of something much bigger, and far more dangerous, than a lonely road and a list of strange rules. The past wasn't dead here. It was alive, waiting to pull me under. The night settled heavy around my rig like a thick, wet blanket. The forest pressed close, dark and silent, except for the distant hum of insects and the faint rustle of leaves. I parked at the edge of a clearing, far from the highway's faint glow. I needed rest, but sleep wouldn't come easy. Not with Route 89 breathing down my neck. I pulled the envelope from my jacket pocket again. It was damp, creased, and stained, like it had been through a storm or two. I had already learned to fear these rules, but one line I hadn't noticed before caught my eye. Written in spidery, hurried script, it read, "Never ask what's under the truck." I frowned. What the hell did that mean? Under the truck? I had spent more hours than I cared to count crawling beneath rigs during repairs. I'd never met anything but dirt and grime down there. But tonight, the words twisted in my mind like a warning whispered just for me. I climbed down and crouched by the rear wheels, flashlight in hand. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing the familiar metal axles, suspension springs, and the rough gravel ground. Nothing unusual. But then I heard it, a faint scraping noise, soft and slow. My breath hitched. I held still, every muscle tensed. The noise came again, closer this time, like nails dragging lightly across metal. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. I wanted to jump back into the cab, slam the door shut, and lock it tight. But my feet stayed rooted, eyes fixed on the shadows under the trailer. The light flickered. Then I saw movement, a slow, shuffling shape, barely visible, as if it were made of smoke or mist. It slid beneath the axle, just out of clear sight. The scraping grew louder, accompanied by something else, a low, rasping breath that didn't belong to any animal I knew. I forced myself to speak, voice barely a whisper, though I wasn't sure who I was talking to. "What the hell are you?" The shape paused. Then it vanished. My skin prickled. The air seemed colder, heavier, like I was standing on the edge of something far older and darker than I could imagine. The rule burned in my mind. Never ask what's under the truck. I had asked. I scrambled back into the cab and locked the door behind me. The radio crackled to life, a voice I knew too well. Dave's voice. "You've seen it now, Alex. And it knows you're curious." I didn't reply. The night deepened, but the scraping beneath the trailer never stopped. It was waiting, watching. I closed my eyes, trying to will the noise away, but it was a reminder. Some rules were made for a reason. Some things were better left alone. I didn't sleep that night. The road outside my window seemed alive with whispers. And somewhere, just below, something waited under the truck. The radio crackled again. That familiar static voice came through, low and steady. "Dave." I knew it was him before I even heard the words. "Alex," he said, like a shadow slipping through the night. "You're running out of time. The road's hungry. It wants a new face, a new soul." I gripped the steering wheel tighter, knuckles white. The cab was silent except for the hum of the engine and the distant rustle of the forest outside. But inside, everything felt like it was closing in. "I'm not bringing anyone in," I said, voice low. "You don't get to choose who pays." Dave laughed. It was cold and hollow, like wind through a graveyard. "You don't understand. This isn't about choice. It never was. Route 89 takes what it needs. We just feed it." I looked out the window. The fog had thickened again, curling like fingers over the road. Every mile marker seemed to blur into the next, twisting time until I wasn't sure if I was moving forward or circling back. "Why me?" I asked, almost whispering. "What do you want from me?" The radio was silent for a moment. Then Dave's voice returned, softer this time, almost regretful. "Because you broke the rules. Because you kept driving when others gave up. You're special, Alex. But special means you're useful." I swallowed hard. Useful. A pawn in something I didn't fully understand, trapped by rules I barely believed in until they started ripping at my mind and body. "Tell me what happens if I say no," I said, feeling the weight of every second. Dave's reply was simple. "Then the road takes you anyway. And it won't be quick or easy. You'll become part of it, lost forever in the mist." I shut off the radio, but the warning stayed with me like a ghost sitting beside the passenger seat. I wasn't about to let Route 89 win. Not like this. I pulled the journal from the glove box, flipping through pages I hadn't read yet, notes from others who had driven this cursed road. They wrote about bargains made, promises broken, and the terrible price paid for crossing the wrong line. A plan started forming in my mind, not to give in, but to fight back, to break every rule one by one, and see if I could shatter the road's hold on me. The engine growled, and the tires crunched against gravel as I pushed the truck back onto the highway. The fog seemed thicker now, heavier, like it was breathing around me. I wasn't sure what waited in the darkness ahead, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to play by their rules anymore. I knew the road was coming for me. Every mile I drove felt like I was sliding deeper into some dark trap, where the rules weren't just words. They were chains holding back something worse than death. The list of rules I'd been given didn't just protect me. They kept whatever was beneath this road from swallowing me whole. But I couldn't follow them anymore. Not after everything I'd seen, felt, heard. I had to fight back. I clenched the steering wheel tighter, eyes scanning the thick fog that pressed in like a living thing. The silence in the cab was heavy, broken only by the hum of the engine and the occasional crackle from the radio that had gone quiet since Dave's last ominous message. The first rule I broke was the one about the mirrors. The words echoed in my mind. Do not look into them between 3:13 and 3:33 in the morning. It was almost exactly that time. My hands trembled, but I couldn't resist. Slowly, I glanced into the side mirror. The reflection wasn't right. The forest behind me twisted and stretched like some nightmare, trees bending in impossible ways. Then a face flashed, a pale woman's face, wet with tears but empty in her eyes. She mouthed something I couldn't hear. My heart slammed against my ribs. I blinked, and the mirror was normal again. The radio buzzed, breaking the silence, and for a brief second, I thought I heard Dave's voice whisper, "You're finished now, Alex." But I wasn't finished. Not yet. Next, I ignored the rule about mile marker 113. I slammed on the brakes when I saw the sign, but instead of slowing down, I pressed harder on the gas. The woman from before stood at the edge of the road, her hand outstretched like a warning. The tires bit into the gravel, but I kept moving. The air around me thickened, filled with a low growl that vibrated through the truck's frame. The radio erupted with static, then a voice I didn't recognize screamed through, begging me to stop. I slammed my fist down, cutting the sound off. The trees seemed to lean closer now, their branches scraping the sides of the trailer like fingernails. The road stretched on endlessly, but I felt the world fold around me. Time fractured. My hands shook as I reached for the horn, breaking the rule about the tunnel entrance. The deep, mournful sound echoed off the walls, but it was answered by something else, something alive. The headlights flickered and died. Darkness swallowed me whole. I could hear breathing beneath the truck. Slow, heavy, and wet. It wasn't human. Something pressed against the tires, moving with a terrible purpose. Panic clawed its way up my throat, but I forced myself to stay calm. I flicked on the emergency lights and slammed the gear into reverse, trying to escape the grip of the thing below. But the truck didn't move. The engine roared but stayed stuck. Then the cab shook violently, as if the road itself was ripping apart. I gripped the seat with white knuckles and whispered a prayer to whatever gods might listen. Suddenly, the radio crackled to life. Dave's voice was calm, cold, but there was a hint of something like pity. "You're breaking the rules, Alex. But maybe you're ready to see what's really under the road." The shaking stopped. A blinding light flooded the cab from beneath. I could feel the weight of something immense, something hungry, reaching for me. Then everything went black. When I came to, the truck was shattered. Trees bent at impossible angles, and the sky was a roiling mess of colors I couldn't name. The road was gone. Only the wilderness remained, dark and quiet. I was alive. Somehow. But the rules were still there, etched into my mind. And I knew this wasn't the end. The road had broken me, but I had broken it back. For now. The night wrapped around me like a cold, suffocating blanket. The storm wasn't just rain or wind. It was something alive, something hungry. The sky tore open in flashes of broken lightning, jagged and wild, but it was the silence between the crashes that gnawed at my nerves the most. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than ever before. Every rule I had once thought nonsense now felt like chains tightening around my throat. I had broken them all. Every single one. The road ahead twisted in ways it shouldn't. Curves folded back on themselves, the trees bending inward like fingers reaching for me. The radio crackled with static, then bursts of Dave's voice, distorted, laughing as if mocking me. I couldn't tell how long I'd been driving. Time had become a loop, folding in on itself like the road. The truck's engine sputtered, coughing and gasping. Something heavy thudded beneath the chassis, dragging and scraping, but every time I looked down, there was nothing there. Then it came, the moment I'd feared, the moment the road took everything from me. A sudden, violent jerk threw me sideways. The truck veered off the asphalt, tires crunching gravel and tearing at dirt. My chest slammed against the seatbelt, breath whooshing out of my lungs. I fought the wheel, trying to right the rig, but the world spun and buckled. The windshield shattered with a crack like thunder. Glass rained down on me, glittering shards reflecting the storm's eerie light. The rig tipped, rolling slowly at first, then faster, as the earth itself seemed to twist beneath us. When the world finally stopped spinning, silence fell, a heavy, crushing silence broken only by the soft drip of rain through the cracked roof. I was pinned, bruised, every breath sharp and shallow. Blood trickled down my temple, hot and sticky. Panic clawed at my throat, but I forced myself to stay still, to listen. Then through the haze I saw him. Younger me, smaller, quieter, behind the shattered glass, gripping a steering wheel that belonged to no truck I recognized. His eyes were wide with fear but somehow calm, like he knew what was coming. Next to him, in the passenger seat, stood Dave. His face was pale, almost translucent, and his eyes glowed faintly in the dark. He smiled, slow and cold, raising a hand to wave goodbye. "See you on the next run, Alex," he whispered, his voice a sibilant echo. The apparition faded as the storm lifted, but the chill it left behind was real. I struggled out of the wreckage, every muscle screaming, every step a battle. The forest around me was dark and still, the road swallowed by mist. I knew then this wasn't the end, not for me, not for the road. Route 89 didn't let go that easily, and neither did Dave. But I was alive. For now. I woke up to the dull, sterile smell of antiseptic. My head felt heavy, like I'd been carrying a weight for days, maybe weeks. The cold hospital sheets stuck to my skin as I tried to move, but pain shot through my ribs. My eyes adjusted slowly to the white ceiling above, unbroken except for a flickering light. I couldn't tell how long I had been out. The steady beep of a machine and the distant murmur of voices were all I could hear. I tried to sit up, but the world tilted sharply. My breath caught, and I sank back down, sweat gathering on my forehead. A nurse came in, smiling softly but with tired eyes. She told me I was lucky to be alive, and that I had been found walking on the edge of a burned forest road. I blinked, confused. I asked about the truck. There was no truck. No Route 89 on any map. Nothing but a charred stretch of forest that looked like it had been swallowed by fire. I swallowed hard, the dry hospital air making my throat raw. All the things I'd seen, the rules, the cries, the voices over the radio, it all felt like a fevered dream. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. Then, in the pocket of my jacket, I found the envelope. It was fresh, the paper untouched by the flames or dirt. My hands trembled as I broke the seal. The words inside were written in the same jagged handwriting as before, rules to follow, pass them on. I felt a chill creep down my spine. The road wasn't done with me. Not yet. Outside, the world moved on like nothing had happened. But in my mind, I heard the faint crackle of the CB radio, the whispers and the static. And somewhere, just beyond the hospital window, I could swear I saw a woman crying on the shoulder of a road that didn't exist. The highway stretched out before me like a ribbon of dark silk, smooth but endless. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my knuckles white beneath the worn leather gloves. The new route wasn't supposed to be like that cursed stretch in the Appalachians. No whispered rules, no strange warnings, no fading road signs. Just miles of blacktop and open sky. But something didn't feel right. I glanced at the side mirror, expecting the usual reflection of the empty lane behind me. Instead, the glass rippled like water caught in a breeze. The edges blurred, as if the mirror itself wasn't quite sure what it wanted to show me. The trees lining the roadside twisted, leaning in closer, their branches clawing at the night like desperate fingers. Then I saw her. A woman stood at the shoulder, just beyond the edge of the mirror's reach. She was small and pale, her face hidden beneath long, wet hair that hung like a curtain. She was crying, soft, broken sobs that seemed to drip through the glass and curl around my mind like smoke. Her dress was soaked, clinging to her like it was made of water. I blinked hard, trying to shake the vision. When I looked again, she was gone. My heart hammered in my chest, a wild, chaotic drumbeat that filled the cab. The radio crackled to life, the faint voice of a dispatcher calling out, but the words made no sense. Static swallowed the sound, leaving me with only the cold silence of the road and the heavy weight of the night pressing in. I thought about the rules, the ones I had broken, the ones I had followed, and the final one I refused to obey. I thought about Dave's voice, gruff and patient, telling me the road would never let me go. That the road was alive, hungry, and always watching. The highway ahead seemed darker now, a deep black wound cutting through the earth. My truck felt heavier, like it was sinking into the asphalt, dragging me closer to some unseen edge. I swallowed hard, telling myself this was just fatigue, just the tricks a lonely driver's mind plays on the long, empty miles. But deep down I knew. The road was waiting, and whatever it wanted, it was never done with me. I adjusted the mirror one last time. The crying woman's face stared back.